welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be doing a few question and answers on here now because I said that I was going to do that last time, and I wanted to make sure that was done this week. So anything that you want to ask in relation to your OCD, any questions you want me to cover, I will cover those now. Just put them in the comments below and I will cover all of those in relation to your OCD. I can't cover broad topics like what is unconditional self-acceptance, how do I recover from harm OCD, HOCD, how do I recover from ROCD. It's too broad. So it needs to be a little bit more specific for the Instagram lives. Now, what I also wanted to talk about was physical symptoms of anxiety. So physical symptoms, what happens here? Well, most of my journey initially was predominantly related to anxiety thinking, that was anxious thinking, with something that scared me and then feeling that latched on. It wasn't very physical. Barely had any heart palpitations, barely felt much more sensations more than the anxiety in my sort of head, that sort of sensation. That was about it. And it was primarily fears like fear of getting HIV, fear of health OCD related fears. And that was it, literally nothing more than that. And at that time, I felt like a normal person, so-called normal person, just with some fear and just with it latched, and that was it. Had no idea about OCD, had no idea of anything else. It just felt like if I was scared of something like, I don't know, when I used to, you're talking when I was 13, 14, in that era, when I used to go to the skate park, rollerblading and so on, and going down a ramp, that anxiety of thinking, going into that half pipe thinking I could fall over and hurt myself. Well, that was related to the anxiety in relation to the fears that I had at the time of 17, 18, and then it latched and then it locked and then just feeling that sensation. Nothing more than that. As time progressed, it then became more physical. It became something where I used to feel palpitations a lot. I used to feel chronic pain in my neck, in my back. I used to feel dry mouth. I used to feel, what other things did I have? I had a lot of sweating, all these kinds of things. Waking up in the night, intermittent waking up, joint pain, jittery feeling, restlessness that was sort of an internal sort of vibration of restlessness, often with palpitations and sort of fluttering heart sensations, all of that stuff, which then brought with it loads of other problems of, was that health, is this cause for concern? Is this a major health thing that you're overlooking, and so on? And so that was the journey. But these physical sensations can become their own problem in themselves. Forget the health OCD element of, am I going to die? Is this a serious disease? But the amount of trouble these physical sensations cause. So after a while, you get some people, not always, everyone's different. Some people, it becomes more physical. So they notice these physical sensations disrupting their life more. And it's then they might find it hard to, they may find it that they're sweating a lot when going out. They might find that their hands are trembling. They might find that they've got palpitations constantly whenever doing anything, and all these kinds of things. Now, obviously, when this has been going on for a long time, it was like in phases. So initially, my journey began with having more of a thoughts-based anxiety, where it was always led up by a thought. The thought was the catalyst. But then some people don't ever have a physical part. They are predominantly stuck in a thinking and a thoughts-based anxiety. Some people have more physical. For me, it phased into more physical as time passed, and then became primarily physical. And then with developing GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, it was what just felt like chronic physical all the time without a thought and without a fear specifically there. And that was then at play for a long time before that faded down. Now, in that time, the physical symptoms would get to a point where it felt like a sort of a machine gun was going off in your chest, or it would wake me up 10 times a night in between constant nightmares of feeling you're being chased by a tiger, and then waking up with the sheets drenched and you with your heart beating out your chest, and you just used to think, bloody hell, I'm not even that anxious today. Why is it to this extent? And that's because the It's like any habit that you build up in the brain, whether you're trying to learn a new sport or a new skill, you've practiced that in a sort of negative cycle because of how the anxiety's been there. So the brain's learnt to fire up that system like that. And then in the generalized anxiety disorder, it's fired up automatically as a sort of protective mechanism against the environment and how you see the world. And so that's very much there, especially if you have a fear of death or something, because death is a part of our perspective of life. If we're very scared of death, that's then seeping into our reality and how we're experiencing it today. The same as existential OCD does, just that. Because it's how we're observing our reality around us, it's sort of all-encompassing in this sort of anxiety-like internal web that's keeping us trapped in there in a physical anxiety format. Now, medication can obviously help reduce that, and often by reducing those symptoms, then the OCD sufferer feels freer and feels more alive and feels more confident. Often it can bring other physical sensations, which they can then become scared of those too. But physical symptoms are different for everyone. In all the years that I've been doing this, I see people with all kinds of physical symptoms. The nervous system is obviously running throughout the whole body, so you can have anything. Never underestimate how much it can mimic these things. It can mimic sensations in your groin. It can mimic sensations in your heart. It can create real sensations of pain in your heart, groin, arms, eyes, ears, everything. Absolutely anything. And physical symptoms are particularly frustrating because it feels at that point that you have done this to yourself, that you have made yourself physically ill, that you are destroying your body through your thinking, especially if you have the belief that I am doing this to myself. I am responsible for bringing about this OCD. Something that I thought when I was 12, 13, I used to think, well, can't you just stop thinking like this? And you're doing this, in a subtle format before it became chronic. And so it's very easy to get into that habit of thinking like that. It's a very, very easy thing to do. We all do that at times. So in terms of physical symptoms, a lot of it is about learning to observe them and leave them be. A lot of it is obviously at the core, getting into what you're scared of. But you do need to wear them like an uncomfortable coat too for them to fade down. But it's the fighting them as well, which then causes your brain to be more aware of that particular part of your body and firing those nerves up as you're watching internally like a hawk that particular area of your body. Now, let me just go back to some of these questions that have come up. Feeling discomfort around my partner and all of a sudden it disappears. We cover this in great detail in the YouTube channel, in the ROCD playlist. But the reason it's going to turn up around your partner or away from your partner is just depends on how the fear is latching. So it will do that with different fears, but you can't get into changing your external environment to escape the sensation internally, because that is the compulsion. Very first step to take in recovery, we have a webinar coming up on that. If you have a look at Instagram stories on our page, all about where to begin in the OCD recovery journey. I tense my muscles a lot and can't stop it. Is that also to do with OCD? It can be. It can be a sort of reflex to do with control and safety and just feeling generally anxious, where when you're generally anxious, the body will turn that on and you can get into that. But there's lots of elements where this stuff can take place. You could get used to just hunching your shoulders like this. You could get used to that sensation. And then it becomes a habit. You've only got to look at people who go to the gym a lot who might want to look in a certain way with their shoulders. They'll tense all their shoulders up and hold that position because they like how that looks. And then that actually, bit by bit, is causing them to strain their back. So, we're not always aware of things we're doing, like tension in our jaw, holding our jaw tight, all these kinds of things. In relation to those questions about feeling confused with your partner, you're going to have to get used to feeling confused. You've got to get comfortable with feeling confused, okay? Because the reason that is so important is OCD is always wanting you to work it out, to sort of find this imaginary key for a lock that doesn't exist. So we've got to get used to that sensation of discomfort, that sensation of confusion, that sensation of feeling lost and not understood and not knowing a way out, and getting more comfortable with that whilst progressively working towards recovery. And that's key, because otherwise we are internally fighting a sensation, and it's like trying to clear some water that's muddy water with a stick and stirring it up. The more we do it, the more cloudy it gets. That's very much what's happening inside the head. Suggestions for documentaries, TV shows to watch as exposures in regards to harm OCD. Well, those need to be specifically chosen in relation to how your harm OCD is getting in, what area. Maybe it's fear of being a psychopath, a rapist, somebody who stabs someone who kills their family, whatever. And that's got to be tailored for that. But then you can usually think of ways to target that and sort of gentler ways to build that up. We can invent a lot of those ourselves. But it obviously helps hugely by speaking to someone like me who understands how to tailor that specifically to what you fear. But you need to look at what angle it's trying to come in at. Guys, I won't say I'm recovering, but after not performing compulsions, I realised that I'm being about to accept myself even more. That's excellent, because that is the key. When you cut the compulsions out, helps us to become more internally free and feel more alive and better, little by little, more and more. So that's why it's so important that we cut those compulsions out. Those are the drug of choice for OCD sufferers. Those are what OCD sufferers want so much. And OCD sufferers, that's their addiction, the drug of choice. They're getting the compulsion, getting that illusion of certainty, because we believe it is certain, even though it's not. And then we just keep going and going and going for that. And it becomes very compulsive. And so even in the sessions I do, I have to be very strict with when people are trying to use tone to get a reaction from me in terms of a form of reassurance, or different questions to try and get an answer, to get a feeling, to get a sensation. It comes in various forms. And if somebody doesn't truly understand OCD, they will often miss that. They will be entering into a reassurance negotiation. And this is never going to release long term that way. So we need to be very careful of that, and we need to observe that. Just going through these questions. How do I let go of controlling my throat and swallowing? By controlling, I mean consciously thinking of every swallowing. That is sensory motor OCD. We've got some great videos by Nicholas Panella on our YouTube channel. Check those out. There's loads of those in the sensory motor section, exactly the kind of things he personally suffered from and recovered from. So those will get into that. I need a mantra when I get a thought. You don't need a mantra when you get a thought. You think you need a mantra. We do not talk about mantras. Mantras become a compulsion. If I went round all day long saying, don't be anxious, please don't be anxious, you're going to be okay, you're going to survive, you're going to recover, that is going to become a compulsion in itself. I used to do those kinds of things hundreds of times a day, all the time. And they become an automatic habit that we then start doing sort of almost just everywhere, because we get so used to doing that. Fear of getting a specific intrusive thought forever. That is one that they always try and get in with. I used to get that specifically in relation to horror films. So it used to be, if you saw that image is never going to leave your head, and you're going to be stuck anxious, chronically anxious with that particular image in your head for the rest of your life. That's one of the main areas that it latched to initially. And it can do that in various settings. It could do it like driving down the road, you see a car crash, thinking, what if I saw something that means I'm never going to be able to get that image out of my head? Various things like that, because we've got a disorder that creates a chronic locked-on sensation. And because we can remember that, it's very easy to become scared of it itself being locked on in that chronic format, or anxiety locked on in a chronic format, or all of that in various ways. So we're very hyper-vigilant to fear of fear, in a sort of continuous cycle that doesn't stop. How do we control anxiety? Well, that question, we're learning tools to get a better understanding of anxiety so it can flow through us and it doesn't have us. Now, that is not control. When we're trying to control anxiety, it does the opposite. We try and control anxiety, it controls us. So it's about viewing it like this flowing sort of energy or flowing water or whatever that's just passing through. It's raising up and down, just like the sea is coming in and out on the shore, and leaving that to occur, not getting into that battle, because it's not something, it's a natural process in the body. So we're leaving that there. Now, when it is becoming locked on in a chronic format, we're working on gradually, again, gradually is the key word, shifting and changing our perspectives so we can allow this to flow in and out, and we are not trying to build a dam and bolt it down, and we're not trying to force and lock it off. And that is absolutely vital, because it's that whole nature, it's in tone. I can speak to somebody and in 2 or 3 minutes of never having met them and hearing about their OCD and anxiety, see straight away through the tone of voice how locked and internally they're pushing back against it, just in their tone of voice. Usually you can hear things like they'll say, "Hi Rob, I just want to talk to you a bit about my anxiety. I was trying to work this out, and then I did this, and then I just can't remember what I was thinking, and then it did that, and then I thought this, and I tried to release that, and then I don't understand that." And you can just hear it's like cogs that are all locked up. And that's because their thinking is all so rigid and black and white. They're sort of in this very fixed dimension, and they're trying to sort of move like this, whereas we're trying to let all of this just flow out, okay? So that is key, because it is that internal cog-like locking up mechanism that's causing the anxiety cycle to have that fuel. And that's a key point, very key point to remember. A lot of questions are asking things like, can such and such occurrence lead to OCD, lead to this? That was a path that I went down for so long, trying to work out, why am I thinking like this? Why am I like this? Why am I feeling this? Why am I experiencing this? What has happened in my mind, genetics, body, chemistry that has created this sensation? And trying to work that out and trying to constantly understand that is what we were just talking about before, control. We're trying to go into that again, into that locking up to try and get an answer. We've always believed with our problems since childhood that if we fix things, we can sort things out, calm things down, push things down, and then things go back to calm. Well, that's not. It's actually the opposite. And that's key as well. It's the working out. It's this internal treading of water at a very fast pace that we're doing inside that's fueling the anxiety. Now, that doesn't come down just as having an understanding of that. We have to bring down the fears too. So all together, gradually, that fades out. How do we accept that this is for life? It doesn't really matter, because now I said that quickly, but it's true. It doesn't matter, because the disorder has no power without fear. So it's not like an illness which you need to take 20 different tablets to prevent it killing you. It's only fueled by fear. Once the fear is brought down, you can't tell you've got it. You feel just as you ever did. You feel completely at peace. It's not there. The only thing is the fear fueling it. That's all it's got. That's all that there is. Time and patience is a huge key for those suffering. Remember to give time a chance. Brianna talking about that there from my YouTube channel. Very true. You can't beat that. People don't like time as being a factor, because they're like, I've had this for so long, I want rid of this now. Well, it's that attitude that's actually fueling it too. But it's understandable to feel like that. Why? because it feels shit when you're suffering really badly from anxiety a lot of the time. Yes, you get used to wearing it and becoming more comfortable with it and able to live your life, and then you don't get, like, if I had 30-40% anxiety for the rest of my life, I could still do everything. It wouldn't be that big a deal. But to me, when it was really ramped on, I learned to hate it. I had to become really comfortable with wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. But I wasn't initially. I definitely wasn't like that. I wasn't wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. I wanted rid of it. I viewed every bit of it, sort of every element that it felt internally, I viewed as it needed to be eradicated. That if any of it was experienced, that was interrupting my life and making my life, when I look back at my life, as all that time was experienced with anxiety. And I didn't want that. I wanted rid of that sensation. I didn't want to experience an ounce of it. That was the problem. It was a perfectionist internal eradication of the sensation which was fueling it as well. All these questions that are like, is it possible for OCD to do this? Is it possible for it to feel like this? Is it possible to experience this sensation? You've got to think that is again trying to control it. Is mine different? I need to know. If it isn't, then I'm stuck. And then it's about, well, whatever, allowing whatever to happen. This learning to practice this general state of acceptance, not needing to know, is everything okay? Being okay with things not being okay, even if you weren't it well. So you had a terminal illness. What are you going to do? You can only do what's in front of you to get better, and the rest of the time, you've got to accept it. We're all technically terminally ill. We're all going to be dead in 40, 50 years, 30, 40 years, depends how old you are. But we view that as further away, so that's not an issue now. But if you're in it, and you're in that situation, what are you going to do? What can you do? Nothing. You just got to give up that internal resistance, live in the moment, and that's all you can do. There's nothing you can do. Now, that is key, because that's an internal surrendering, which is key to OCD recovery. Getting into that position of internal surrender. How do I do that, Rob? How do I internal surrender? I don't know how. I don't know what to do. It's a process that you're gradually learning to embody. Please tell me how to get rid of fear. You can't just have an answer that's a tip or trick that solves this. People often say to me, I get hundreds of messages a week saying, Rob, just a moment out of your time, quick tip and trick, how to solve OCD. If I could give you a tip or trick that solved OCD, we wouldn't bother with all the other elements that we talk about in our work. Because we would just say, oh, here's 5 tips, done. And it feels like there would be, because often at times we've thought of something and so on, and we've managed to turn the sensation off with some tips. So we get to a point where we imagine that the whole journey is a sort of tip-based. Plus, the internet's full of so much nonsense often that people do write things as a sort of quick, fast tips, get rid of OCD in 5 days or any of that nonsense. And so we get into a habit of sort of searching for that information. But it's not a thing like that. It's something that you can recover quickly in general, but it's not something that, in terms of a lifetime, it's quick. You can recover. It's not going to take forever. It's certainly not rocket science. However, what people are trying to do is the sort of 5-day recovery the same day, or have it all fixed in 2 weeks. It doesn't work like that. And I think that's key, because when you're trying to recover that quickly, when you're constantly, I've just got to recover, I've just got to get this all sorted and done today, I've just got to get this fixed, you're going to feel more anxious, because you're putting a time constraint on the recovery process. That's why I always used to say to people, when you see a site that says like, our recovery plan is 4 weeks, or do this amount of exposures and you'll be finished in 3 weeks. It's rubbish. You can't do that, and it makes people feel more stuck because they've got a time restraint on it. And that is also a problem with a lot of places running therapy as a format of come in and do these 5 sessions and you're done. And if you're not, then maybe you're treatment resistant. People panic. That used to happen a lot because people used to say, oh, well, there was 5 CBT sessions, and if you've done those, and if you're not better, well, you usually are, and most people are. What happens when they get there and they're not? And they start panicking. And it's all right to have a guide and say, okay, this number of sessions is a rough guide that's going to help and improve. But when you're putting a fixed deadline, and you get into a tricky scenario when it comes to anxiety, you have to have rough guides and say, okay, well, if you're not, this hasn't helped by that point, then we do a bit more work and a bit more understanding because it's a process. That's okay. But it's not okay when we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to do this and I've got to get better by this. It doesn't work like that. It's the same as if you went to a gym and you wanted to get in better shape, and you saw a personal trainer and said, look, I'm going to sign up for 2 months, I'm going to work really hard. What's my chance of getting in good shape? Pretty high. Big improvement to your life. But once you get there, you're going to think, well, what other things can you do? And it's a process. It's like if I went to go and live now with a Buddhist monk who's spent his whole life practicing being in the moment, letting go of everything, and this sort of journey towards enlightenment, he would look at how I am in terms of acceptance and think, Jesus, he's still holding on to lots of society constraints in terms of things like maybe even wearing a t-shirt as opposed to what he would wear, thinking that's something that's some other constraint. So there's levels in terms of how I want to function in society and my goals and what I want to do and what he wants to do. But OCD and anxiety operates on that spectrum to a degree of acceptance where once you get to a certain point, then the anxiety fades down. Now, obviously, the journey can continue further and further in a lifetime. And one Buddhist monk to another will see another one as far beyond his point. So it's a journey, it's a spectrum. However, you only need to pass a certain point for OCD not to have that grip and not have that control over you like it does at this point in time. So that's a key point, viewing it as this spectrum, viewing it as this journey that you go through in life. And what a great journey to go through something in life that's teaching you about how you observe things, how you see things, giving up control, giving up internal resistance. We're taught that in every area of life. Oh, you've got to work harder here, you've got to do this, you've got to control this. And don't get me wrong, I work very, very hard, but I don't have this internal control sensation, which is what is at the core of so much stress, anxiety, internal clinging. And that's the message of today that I wanted to cover. And I will be back on here soon doing some more of these Instagram lives on different sections. So I hope that you have found that helpful. And these will get uploaded to the YouTube channel. Please, if you watch our YouTube videos, please follow our account. We're trying to build that up so more people can learn about OCD and what actually works for recovery. And if you like that, please push the like button on YouTube, which helps us get seen more on YouTube. And so that we can help a lot of people with OCD and getting information that really makes a difference instead of so much information that we all know as when we've been on the journey ourselves that doesn't work. Lots of these things, like we were saying, these deadlines and sort of just leaving thoughts there without any more input into the understanding of how that works. And so, yeah, that's the journey we're on to helping people with OCD. And there's a great team around me that are doing all the videos. I'm sure you've seen all the guys on there sharing their stories and talking all about how they've got better and what things worked for them, what things didn't, and all the different themes and thoughts and so on that held them trapped, them and me trapped for so many years. So yeah, we will keep doing that. And anything that you want to see included on this channel, just DM us and I will make sure that we can get that stuff covered as soon as possible. We're always looking for new topics to cover and new things to cover. We've got a whole lineup of new things and topics that we're going to do that we haven't, we've covered a large range. There's probably about 400 videos on the channel. But, we're aiming to make this channel thousands of videos. And so we'll be covering all topics. So message us. All right, guys, great to see you all. And I will see you on the next Instagram Live.